Well, hello there. It's 2025, and American politics just got more chaotic with OBBBA, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act of 2025. Yes, beautiful is in the official title. Narrowly passed in the House, 215 to 214, President Trump's latest magnum opus, a sprawling piece of legislation. Supporters hail it as a landmark achievement. Now, it's off to the Senate. Buckle up. This OBBBA ride is just getting started. Alright, let's talk money. OBBBA, despite its beautiful moniker, comes with a price tag that could make a Saudi prince wince. Independent analyses estimate this bill could add between $3.1 trillion and $5.3 trillion to the federal deficit over the next decade. The Congressional Budget Office, or CBO, projects that OBBBA would increase primary deficits by $2.5 trillion over the decade. Add in the interest costs, and the total increase in federal debt balloons to around $3.1 trillion. But wait, there's more. OBBBA has hidden costs. Many of its tax provisions are temporary. If these temporary tax goodies are extended without being offset by other measures, the CBO estimates the debt impact could soar to $5.1 trillion. So, where is all this red ink coming from? Primarily it's from tax cuts. Specifically, tax cuts that tend to favor higher earners, and of course it's from increased federal borrowing to pay for everything. The bottom line is this beautiful bill is shaping up to be one very expensive piece of legislation. For you, for everyone. Now, not everyone paints such a dire fiscal picture. Enter the Tax Foundation. They've run their own numbers on OBBBA, and their analysis offers a slightly different perspective. On a conventional basis, they project the bill's tax provisions will reduce federal revenue by $4 trillion between 2025 and 2034. But here's where it gets interesting. The Tax Foundation also does something called dynamic scoring. This is where they try to predict how tax cuts might stimulate economic growth, which in turn could lead to more tax revenue. In OBBBA's case, the Tax Foundation projects that factoring in this potential economic growth, the revenue loss shrinks to $3.2 trillion. So even with their dynamic scoring, the Tax Foundation still sees a significant revenue loss. Their dynamic analysis suggests a total deficit increase of $1.7 trillion before accounting for interest costs. Add in the interest, and you're quickly back into the multi-trillion-dollar deficit territory. It's important to remember that dynamic scoring is controversial. It relies on a lot of assumptions about how businesses and individuals will react to tax changes. Ultimately, the Tax Foundation's analysis doesn't exactly scream fiscal responsibility. Naturally, the White House and its staunchest supporters in Congress are singing a very different tune about OBBBA's financial impact. House Speaker Mike Johnson, for instance, has been out there alongside other GOP figures, trumpeting that the bill incorporates $1.5 trillion to $1.6 trillion in mandatory spending savings. But here's the thing about magic beans. They mostly exist in fairy tales. Independent analyses have found that these supposed savings are more than a little offset by the sheer scale of the tax cuts. Factcheck.org has pointed out that these claims of deficit neutrality, or even reduction, directly contradict the estimates from impartial bodies like the CBO. The CBO projected a $3.1 trillion increase in debt, even with some spending cuts factored in. The CRFB notes that while OBBBA might reduce total projected spending by about $700 billion, it would still add roughly $3 trillion to projected debt levels. The White House spin is strong with this one, but the numbers, stubbornly, tell a different story. So, what are these magical tax cuts that are causing all this fiscal heartburn? OBBBA is essentially a Christmas tree of tax breaks. The bill aims to extend and even expand the 2017 Trump tax cuts. This means lower tax rates for corporations and many individuals, particularly those at the higher end of the income spectrum, will likely continue. But OBBBA doesn't stop there. It introduces a whole new suite of tax breaks. Critics argue that the overall package is heavily skewed. They estimate that a massive $664 billion of the tax cuts will flow directly to the top 1% of earners. And let's not forget the cherry on top of this tax cut sundae. OBBBA also includes a provision to raise the debt ceiling by $4 trillion. So, while some folks might see a little extra in their paychecks, the long-term cost and the distribution of these benefits raise some serious questions about who this beautiful bill is truly beautiful for. Now, to achieve those savings that proponents are so proud of, OBBBA has to find some things to trim. And guess where those trimmings are often found? Programs that help low-income individuals and families. One of the headline cost-saving measures in OBBBA is the implementation of new, stricter work requirements for Medicaid and SNAP. These changes are expected to reduce eligibility for millions of people. The idea behind work requirements is that they encourage people to find jobs. The reality, according to many studies, is that they often just kick vulnerable people off essential benefits without actually improving their employment situation. Another significant cut comes from eliminating clean energy tax credits. Critics highlight that while the wealthiest 1% are projected to get $664 billion in tax cuts, programs like Medicaid are facing estimated cuts of around $880 billion. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. The savings in OBBBA have a very human cost, and it's not being borne equally. Let's zoom in on Medicaid, because OBBBA takes a particularly large scalpel to this program. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that the bill's changes to Medicaid will reduce the federal deficit by a hefty $803 billion over 10 years. But the CBO also projects these same changes will increase the number of uninsured individuals by 8.6 million. A cornerstone of these Medicaid reforms is the nationwide imposition of work requirements. By the end of 2026, states would have to verify that most adults aged 19 to 64 are working at least 80 hours a month or doing other qualifying activities to keep their Medicaid. The CBO thinks this alone will save $280 billion. Supporters say it promotes self-sufficiency. Opponents point out that many Medicaid recipients are working, often in unstable jobs, or face significant barriers to employment. But the hits to Medicaid don't stop there. OBBBA also targets how people enroll and stay enrolled. It mandates that states recheck Medicaid eligibility at least every 6 months, instead of annually. It also reduces retroactive coverage from 3 months to 1 month. Then there are the changes to how states fund their share of Medicaid and how much providers get paid. It's a full frontal assault on the program. OBBBA has cleared the House. Now it faces the Senate, where substantial changes are expected. Senate Republicans may not agree with every provision, and Democrats will be sharpening their knives. The Byrd Rule applies to reconciliation bills. Provisions must be primarily budgetary. The Senate aims to pass its version by mid-July. The federal government is projected to exhaust its cash by August. OBBBA includes a $4 trillion debt ceiling increase. The final version must match the House's before going to the president. So, after all that, what does the One Big Beautiful Bill Act of 2025 actually mean for you, the average taxpayer? The net cost is projected to be somewhere between $3.1 trillion and $5.3 trillion over the next decade. While proponents shout about $1.5 trillion in spending cuts, those are utterly swamped by the sheer magnitude of the revenue losses from the tax cuts. Most independent analyses suggest that wealthier households and corporations are the big winners here. For low and middle income households, the picture is much murkier. Any small tax savings they might see could easily be wiped out by reduced benefits from programs like Medicaid and SNAP. The long-term implications are worrying. Adding trillions to the national debt isn't a victimless crime. It means more of our tax dollars in the future will go towards paying interest on that debt. it can lead to higher interest rates for everyone. Ultimately, the final fiscal impact of OBBBA will depend on what the Senate does to it. But, based on what we know now, this beautiful bill looks set to deliver significant benefits to a select few. So keep an eye on this one. It's your money, your healthcare, and your future they're playing with.